So let's start at the very beginning, but I don't even know what the very beginning is. I guess college. College was where I had my most legitimate voice training. Before that, I would say that my voice teachers were more like cheerleaders, which is so important, and honestly, they built my confidence so much that I wouldn't trade that for anything else, and that taught me a lot as a teacher. Some people are in the phase where they need to be built up, they need confidence, and they need encouragement more than they need, technique. So at BYU was where I really started to put things together. I think I had done a decent job of teaching myself certain things, teaching myself how to sing higher, how to get more connection and projection. But it was nice to be able to have labels for these things now. So at BYU, they speak a certain vocal lingo in terms of contemporary vocals. And so I adapted that, and it seemed to make sense for the most part. There are a few things, the way that it was talked about or explained, that didn't quite make sense to me, but I was constantly trying to make sense of it. I was able to belt very high on demand for hours at a time and then sleep and do it all again the next day. So I was consistent, and there was a lot of power that I had developed, and for the most part was kind of got the feedback that I had decent technique, and I certainly did, in order to get to those notes and the way that I was singing and vocalizing those notes. Yeah, like the technique was there. I was just a little confused in terms of the way that I was taught to label things. So, however, Gail Lockwood at BYU knows more about the freaking human singing voice than anyone I know. She is incredible. And she taught me so much, and I think she really inspired me to want to teach. Beautiful human. She's incredible. And I just watched her take an inexperienced singer and communicate a few adjustments and changes that they could make to find immediate results. I mean, immediate progress. And that was super exciting to me, super inspiring. So did the BYU thing. I started teaching voice and really kind of adapting that technique and that process as my own. However, as I was teaching, I found it more and more difficult to explain, so just constantly things are evolving and shifting a little bit in terms of how I talk about and think about vocal technique. So right after college, I went on the sing-off, but I was still like a little baby, right? I was like 22, 23, and then toured around a bit with Delilah, and that was a ton of fun. Really didn't experience any issues there. Things were working fine the way that I wanted them to. I was starting to do a lot of videos and covers and performances. And then I went on The Voice, and it's funny because when I was like, okay, I need to sit down and just kind of talk about my vocal health experience, I keep thinking about all these little things that played into it. So when I was on The Voice in 2013, we worked with a voice teacher who prepped us for our performances, and she was so fabulous. Treylani, I love you so much. I think we were working on House of the Rising Sun, and she actually commented on my vocal technique, and she was like, you have great technique, and she's like, however, when you're up there, it needs more grit, it needs a little power. She's like, honestly, like, we need a little more chest. We need a little more umph up there. And which I was like, oh, I mean, and I had sung rock music before that. I think there was just, and had certainly manipulated my voice to get more grunge and grit. But I think there was something about the range of that song that it just like, it was too clean. So I dirtied it up and felt really good. Like probably found some new tones and tools. And yeah, and kind of that was that, but I noticed that may have planted a little seed. So fast forward to the next year, 2014, I started recording an EP that I released in 2015. And I do remember that when I was recording vocals, it's just like nothing came easy. You know, it did feel effortful, and I didn't really think much of it. I don't know what I thought. However, I will say that I was also like a dum-dum training for and dieting down for a bodybuilding competition, and so there was a lot of stress on my body, and so I don't think that was helping by any means. But yeah, I do remember my voice feeling tired and strained. So I don't love my vocals on that album. They turned out fine. But now I'm just like, ugh, knowing what I know now. But anyway, so then 2015 happens, and it was fine. In the summer of 2015, I was in New York City at the New York Musical Theater Festival, doing Deep Love, and totally fine. That was a lot of shows in a short period of time, not an issue. While I was in New York, I auditioned for and got booked for a national tour of Vocalocity, which was an a cappella show created by Deke Sharon. And that was super exciting. I actually went back out to New York City in September to record for an album for that show, and no problems there. Then in October of 2015, I was on just a Pacific Northwest mini tour with Deep Love, and I got really sick. This was like our second week. We were in Idaho, and then like that sickness just like went straight to my vocal cords. And I've never experienced complete like voice loss except for then. It's the only time I've experienced complete voice loss, to the point of I was trying so hard to even say hello, actually couldn't. That was terrifying and also awful, because it's not a show that you can vocally fake your way through. So that was a whole situation. But I mean, I was sick, so I didn't really think much of it. However, we had a little bit of a break before we went to Oregon, and so I went to the doctor, and they hooked me up, and I got a batch of prednisone, and I took that, and I made a really quick recovery, and I was able to get back and finish out those shows. I had some steroids previously, just 2 other times. I got a shot when I was on the sing-off because I was sick and was filming. And then a few years before that, I had a really important show coming up with my band, and I was also sick and just like concerned about this recovery. Prednisone had really helped me, and anyways, I was like, oh, that's just a really nice thing to have. Now, fast forward, this is the beginning of 2016. I'm in Gainesville, Florida, for a tech week before Vocalocity opens, like our national tour. So I had been rehearsing for a couple weeks before that, and then we were in tech. I woke up one morning, I actually think it was in the middle of the day, but all of a sudden I was feeling a lot of restriction in my high end. So if you like vocalize, if you do the sound, like it's almost a little whistly, it's very like heady, but like I could not get that closure. So I was like, I couldn't quite just make that happen. And as a soprano, like my big solos were way up there. So that was like really concerning to me. And so I was worried about that situation. And so I was like, let me just like go to Instacare and maybe just like get some prednisone, like be safe. And the issue is that I had no idea. The side effects, like the negative aspect of prednisone, really dumb, but makes sense. Makes sense that a quick fix would have some consequences. I did take the prednisone. Opening night was amazing. And honestly, the whole tour was really great until the last week. We had like 4 or 5 shows in Texas to wrap up this first little tour. And same thing happened. It was like in the middle of the day, it felt almost instant. I was just like trying to do kind of a high closure, heady vocalization, and I couldn't, and I just like immediately kind of freaked out. And I was like trying to stay calm, and but yeah, at that point it was like I only have these few shows left, and there wasn't a way that I could see a doctor because we were like back to back and changing cities every day. And I was like, I'm just gonna have to like rough my way through this. Fortunately, I didn't go see a doctor. I didn't take another dose of prednisone because that would have been a disaster. But I was just so frustrated. And there was this one sound check that we had. I just lost it. I just freaked out because it was like this instrument that I usually have so much control over. I mean, I would open my mouth to sing a line that's in like a perfectly normal register, and I had no control. Like I had no control over my voice. I certainly didn't have any kind of high end. I did still have some head voice. I mean, I'm singing on this tour, I'm singing Whole Lotta Love by Led Zeppelin, so it's like real hard hitting. I hold this huge note at the end, and and that's like fully connected, but couldn't connect it. I think it was like, so usually I'm like going hard on that, but all I had left, like by the end of that tour, was like that's all I had left. I think maybe when I'm warmed up, I could like edge it up a tiny bit. But I mean, this was a whole process. I was like 2 hours before sound check, I would turn my bathroom in my hotel room into a steam room. So I'm like, turning on the shower, turning on the sink. I'm, plugging up any of the holes in the doors. Then I go into the steam room and I warm up while I'm in the steam and just like trying to make sure that like it's hydrated, like all these things. But like nothing was helping. Warming up certainly got me to a place where I could vocalize some, but then it was just like, I can't push it because I have to get through 4 more shows. So that was a very, very rough week. Our sound engineer was so awesome. Tony, love you. And I was like, bro, I know you got my back, but like, look, I'm not gonna be singing on this and this and this. And like, when it's time for my solos, like you just like push it, cause I'm just gonna be like head voicing all of this. So that was really, really rough. I wasn't too concerned that this would last forever. I just kind of thought, I'm fatigued, I need rest. So I went home to Florida after that leg of the tour, and I immediately, of course, went in to see the ENT just to check things out and make sure. However, this ENT was not a vocal specialist. And so first of all, the way that they scoped me was through my nose, which I had never had a scope like that before. It was always like through my throat, right? Or through my mouth. He was like, no, like you're fine. It's just inflamed, a little redness. So, you know, you just need to rest. And I was like, okay, cool. Like I thought that was great. I was totally down with that, you know, diagnosis. But it was just, looking back on that, I'm so upset because it was just not thorough and I really needed to see a voice specialist. So yeah, there will be some PSA videos coming after this, including the dangers of prednisone and like a non-voice specialist ENT. Yeah, I've learned a lot. So a few weeks go by, I really did feel like I was starting to recover. It took a few weeks, but I felt like I was making a recovery, felt like I was getting my voice back. And I sent in an audition for another show at the New York Musical Theater Festival and actually booked it. And I was like so excited. But then I did like one heavy day of singing. I just like sat at my piano and I sang through like a bunch of my songs. And the next day I was just like, there was just nothing. Like it was toast. I was like, what the heck is going on? And I tried to work through it a little bit, tried to rest, ended up finding an ENT out here in Utah. I was in Utah at this point, and worked with this incredible vocal therapist at LDS Hospital. But yeah, she scoped me and immediately was like, okay, this is what we have going on. And at the bottom of my cords, there was the beginnings of nodules. And they certainly weren't fully formed, but there were definite like protrusions on my cords, and so just leading to a lot of inconsistency, incomplete closure. It was a whole situation. She's like, it's totally fine. She's like, through some voice therapy and like some vocal rest and just diligence on your part, like you can totally work through this. And I was like, great. And I told her, I was like, I have a show coming up in a couple months that I'm supposed to go out to New York for. So of course that will be rehearsal. That will be a long run of shows. She was like, well, you could be singing at that point for sure. She's like, but you might not be feeling 100% and it may be uncomfortable and it may in fact reverse a lot of the progress that we make. And I was just like, I don't know what to do. Like, I want to go to New York. I want to do this show, but I was so stressed out. And then the stress was like wearing and tearing even more on my voice. And so I finally called my directors and I was like, look, this is what's going on and I'm just like heartbroken about it, but I really think that you guys need to get ahead of this, and I just want to make sure that like you're making the right choice for the show. So I ended up stepping down from that role, but I felt immediate relief, and that really allowed me the time to focus on recovering, on fixing this. And yeah, I wish that was it. Like this was the only time that I, experienced some type of unwanted development on my vocal cord. But the saga continues. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and like cut right now. You can soak this in. So yeah, stay tuned for part 2 of my vocal health journey